welcome to episode 15 of Free to Speak with Bobby and Paul. Once again, I'm Bobby and this is Paul.
Thank you.
So we got a lot of comments. We got comments about the mental illness discussion. We got comments about the abortion. We got comments about the war topic. So we have a lot of things to talk about today, Paul. I don't know if this is going to be an entirely comment show. If we have time, we might get to a new topic. I think maybe we want to talk about single motherhood.
Yeah, we could briefly talk about single motherhood.
Single motherhood.
It's more of a subtopic.
Yeah. We did have a comment from somebody who said, this channel would be popular, but the media intentionally buries those channels that promote these kind of beliefs. My comments are always disappearing from channels because of this. They can classify it as hate speech or something dumb like that.
It looks like the world is telling us about free speech, free media, freedom of expression, but then it's only freedom of expression when you're speaking within the narrative that they want you to speak.
Yes.
So in the end, there's no freedom of speech. And it's not like we're spreading hate speech or, as much as it might sound controversial to the current world, but it's typically what we're speaking human values really. And if the world is more permissive than what human values look like, then they will try to fight, this kind of traditionalistic approach to life.
Yeah. And we're promoting common sense values, Paul, I think. Everything that we've said has been logically defended. We've given arguments, logical arguments for everything that we've said. When people criticize us, it all tends to be very emotional, tends to be intensely emotional, to the point where either they don't want to continue the conversation, so they make a comment, we respond, they don't continue the conversation, or we have a situation like we had last week where we read a comment from somebody. We responded, they responded, and it turned into an argument back and forth, but the person basically sidestepped all of our arguments, ignored our arguments, and just kind of stuck to their talking points.
Ideally, we don't want to be having cliche responses, because even in our previous video, we talked about the fact that the woke people would always digress from this kind of discussions and bring in irrelevant conversation and be emotional and throw tantrums, and that's something that we're seeing. It's more of cliche, it's losing meaning, this kind of responses. We want responses that are more in the logical sense, or challenge us academically, even if I believe academics has been as well manipulated by the woke, given they have the money. If I want, let's say homosexuality to be normal, I'll invest as much money in science to prove it is, and I'll get the results. But still, that's a better premise for actually to have to comment scientifically, comment logically, emotionally. It's okay to comment emotionally, but we want intelligible comments which you can actually build upon. Let's feel challenged.
As human beings, we're emotional creatures. We respond to things emotionally. And sometimes when we're talking about topics, we get emotional. We could sometimes, maybe more me, because I tend to be more animated, I think. I can get very intensely emotional. But there's a certain point where the emotional kind of response ends, and you have to have some sort of rational or logical basis for coming to whatever conclusion you come to.
Definitely.
Yes. And so we're kind of encouraging people, if you feel strong emotions about what we're saying, it's fine to express those. But if you're going to debate us or reason with us, come with credible arguments or logical arguments to defend whatever your position is.
And you don't have to defend what you've done. Like, it's not like me and Bobby are perfect people. We've also made our mistakes in life. We also have places where we've been immoral per se. We're human beings.
I'm far from perfect.
Yeah, it doesn't mean we should come and defend immorality. No, because what's right, the reality is, immorality is just that. It's immorality. So we can't defend it because we've fallen in the trap for it once in a while in our lives. We still have to promote moral standards.
And I think, Paul, I said this last week too when we were talking about the abortion topic, that we're not here to condemn anybody. For example, we obviously lean more towards the pro-life. If you want to use these, we talked about, we don't like this terminology, but we lean towards the pro-life side of things, where we're concerned about protecting the life of the baby. But I made very clear last week, and Paul agrees with this, that we're not here to condemn people or to condemn women who have had abortions. If you've had an abortion, we don't want to see you legally punished. We're both Christians. We believe in grace, forgiveness, second chances. So we're not here to condemn anybody when we talk about any of these topics, but we're concerned about how these various things that we've talked about are negatively impacting society.
Yeah, and the problem with emotional reasoning is, or thinking in the moment, it's just in the moment. And many a times we make erratic decisions or choices because of emotional reasoning. And emotional reasoning in itself is a cognitive distortion, because I could strongly believe by aborting right now I'm making the right choice. It doesn't mean that I'll think the same 2 years from now. 2 years from now I could regret the decision of aborting. I could strongly believe that I don't need my child right now and I throw them in the rubbish bin.
Right.
It doesn't mean that 2 years from now I will not regret it. So we should be able to look beyond our emotions. That's why sometimes before you even make some of these emotional decisions, you'll want to consult a more sober mind, want someone who is detached from your situation, so they can give you a more logical approach to your problems or to your decision making.
So I think we kind of maybe diverged a little off the original comment of somebody saying that this channel would be more popular if we weren't discussing the topics from the point of view of the kind of the anti-woke perspective, I guess you can say. Maybe we're challenging the woke perspective, but I mean we've also talked about the fact that we are woke in the true sense of the word, of what it originally meant.
Yeah.
But of course, it's been hijacked by people who are using social justice to push their own agendas of immorality and so forth. But
yeah, about hijacking, things keep getting hijacked. Good causes keep getting hijacked. You find that I'll just bring Uganda in perspective. We have opposition parties which might have strong values from the beginning, but you find that they're opportunistic politicians who just come in to use the flag to get voted into power, and then they're not really subscribing to the values of that particular party. They just want to use its strength to get into position of power and then they become corrupt and embezzle funds. So same with woke culture. Work began well, but then people were opportunistic. They saw an opportunity to manipulate and divert people's attention to something less helpful to society or more malevolent. Growing up, we had a rainbow. When I was a child, they taught us that the rainbow is a symbol God gave to the Israelites, etc. Long story short, the rainbow was a good sign, and we had it. We could put on rainbow flags, rainbow bags as kids, and it was beautiful and it was fun.
Yep.
In this current world, when you put on a rainbow, people look at you as gay.
Yeah, it means something totally different.
And it's totally different, so that it has been hijacked. Something which was really
yeah.
innocent is now looked at with a different opinion, it's stigmatized. Why couldn't these people use some other colors? Why do they have to choose something which is already having an established meaning?
They're taking that symbol and they're using it for their own agendas.
Yeah.
And it's sad, but yeah, so whether or not we're being shadow banned, it's hard to say. Maybe it's just we just haven't gained traction yet. It's possible, but hopefully over the coming weeks we're going to continue to grow. But if you're watching this, let other people know, share this, tell your friends, have them subscribe, so we can continue to grow.
Yeah, that's the best we can do right now.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to another comment. This one relates to mental health. When we actually had several episodes. Well, we had 2 episodes on mental health, and then we also talked about men and suicides.
Yeah.
Which was indirectly related to mental health. I don't know if it's indirectly,
It's
but
directly.
directly related to mental health. But this comment, thank you, Bobby and Paul. Many people think mental illness starts when the sufferer shows notable changes in behavior or speech. However, this is usually the final stage. How does one tell that they are struggling with mental health? So this is a very good question, Paul. So you're the clinical psychologist, so you're kind of the expert on this. So how does one know that you're struggling with mental health issues?
Yeah, thank you. So basically everyone has mental health. For the more developed countries or the more informed people out there, they may feel like this is a useless question to respond to. or the notion that everyone has mental health may seem like common knowledge, but it's not. To many people, people don't believe they have mental health. But yes, so everyone has
other people. Yeah,
so everyone has a mental health.
Everybody has mental health, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah, whether
or a combination
it's
of
ill,
both.
whether it's healthy.
Right. We associate mental health with the negative, but it's not.
Yeah,
exactly. Everybody has mental health.
So when you're happy, that's mental health. When you're in a good place, and there's something called the mental health, the mental health continuum. So it means that we keep oscillating left, right, positive mental health, negative mental health. We're never in one place. It just keeps moving left, right, left, right. One moment I may feel happy, and the next moment I get bad news about someone. Let's say I love so much and they have passed away. I can't remain happy. Obviously, I'll be very sad or distressed, and I'm not well. The fact that you have mental health means you're susceptible to mental illness, and everyone at some point in their life had mental illness. Though mental illness is a spectrum where you can be in a critical, acute, or at different levels. So we can all have mental illness. The idea of I'll use the World Health Organization's definition of mental health. What they're trying to tell us is that someone would consider themselves to be mentally ill or mentally unwell if they find that they cannot deal with the normal stresses of life anymore. Because stress is part of life. I might be stressed that I have to get something to eat to feed myself. I might be stressed that I need to get school fees for my children and pay rent. That's normal stress. It's called eustress, and everyone has it. But the moment you feel like this stress is overwhelming you, and you feel you don't have the ability you cannot help yourself out of it, it's making your life feel like it's too much. So when you feel like you're reaching a breaking point, that's a point where we can say there are red flags that you're moving into the other side of mental illness. When someone can no longer meaningfully contribute to society, that's a red flag, a telltale sign that they're having negative mental health. So it's not only people who are on the streets undressing and throwing stones and eating dirty things that are mentally ill. It's as simple as having acute stress. You could be stressed, very, very distressed, and you're having a headache. You could have somatic factors. All those are symptoms of mental illness. So how you know that I'm mentally unwell is the moment you feel unwell, the moment you feel overwhelmed. Sometimes all it takes is just talk to someone and you feel better.
Well, the way I've always kind of looked at it, Paul, is if you get to a point where whatever you're dealing with is keeping you from making progress or keeping you from moving forward in life, then at that point you can say that mental illness might be something, and actually I would say at that point you definitely have some kind of mental illness. But if you're able to cope with whatever you're feeling and having stress or having sadness or maybe even having some degree of depression maybe isn't necessarily mental illness, maybe but if it's getting to a point where it's stopping you from moving forward, it's stopping you from getting things done, maybe it's interfering in your job, maybe it's affecting your family relationships, affecting your relationships with your spouse or your children or whatever, if it's keeping you from moving forward, at that point that's when you need to reach out for help.
Definitely.
And don't be afraid to embrace help. Don't be afraid to say that you need help. Because I think we've also talked about this, Paul, that sometimes as men, we feel like we can't talk about the fact that we have these kind of issues or problems. And it's difficult for us as men to do this because we're cultured into this, we're men, we're supposed to be strong, we're supposed to, man up and deal with whatever is thrown at us.
Yeah.
And sometimes we can't. Sometimes things come at us that's just too much.
Yeah. So the moment you're overwhelmed and you feel like whatever is overwhelming you is stopping many important parts of your life, it's stopping them from progressing, it's a telltale sign something is wrong. But also let's not wait to get to that place. There's something called self-care. Make sure you maintain a good mental health. So you don't have to first wait to get to the mental illness to actually seek help. You can as well just take care of your mental health. Self-care, things like do the things that you like, go for hobbies, talk to your friends, visit people, whatever you feel like doing, have some fun.
You talked about exercise.
Last
time, but yeah.
So basically anything that is going to make your mind relax That is self-care.
Yeah. And of course, having a support system, having a support structure of friends and people who care about you and people you can talk to. And if you don't have that, then that's the time to reach out.
Yeah.
You know, and don't be afraid to reach out. And don't turn to things like alcohol and substance abuse.
And whatever we are saying right now is not the only thing. You know, there's a lot of ways you can get support, which we may not talk about. But you know, we just hinted on a few that you can actually address. You know, approach it with.
Yeah. All right. We did have another one about abortion. So last week we spent quite a bit of time talking about a kind of a debate that we had with one particular individual about the abortion topic. And we had another comment about abortion. I don't want a child from this woman. Let us abort. So
Why are you having sex? Why are you having unprotected sex with someone knowing there's a risk of getting pregnant?
Right.
And you don't care. You wait for her to get pregnant, then you want to abort. Why are you having sex with her in the first place? Okay, yes, for pleasure. But why are you having unprotected sex? That's too much risk. Because you're making pregnancy become a risk in this place. Given that you're not even interested in it, it becomes a risk. Why are you risking it?
So it's kind of a little late to think about what you want, because you were willing to take the risk to get the pleasure of sex. So you want, as we've said before, we've talked about this, to get the benefits of sex, but you don't want to deal with the consequences of sex.
But let's talk, even if we get out of the moralistic Christian way of approaching it, scientifically, why are you having sex which is unprotected? There are very many ways, contraceptives you can use when you're having sex with someone you're not interested in having a child with.
Let's say somebody did use contraceptives and it didn't work. What do you do in that? So, does that suggest that we used a condom, we did all this stuff.
But she still got pregnant.
She still got pregnant. She was on the pill, maybe, I don't know, but she still got pregnant. So, does that mean in that sort of case that the abortion is okay?
No. Ideally, okay, but this is my opinion. Ideally, if you know there's still a risk of getting it, you want to be able to face the consequences. Just as much as you could use condoms and etc., but you can still get HIV. You just throw away the HIV and you get it. You have to deal with it for the rest of your life. It is what it is. You're now there. It is what it is. If you choose to speed on a highway, you're speeding over 200 kilometers per hour, there's a chance you will die.
And you also get pulled over by a cop and get arrested. By a police officer.
You don't just get a pass. Okay, now, I almost died, but now let me get back to life. You're dead already.
Yeah.
So the moment you take the risk, then you want to go all the way with whatever consequences come with it.
It's like the person that gets behind the wheel of a car drunk. They're drinking, they get drunk, they drive, they're not completely and totally aware, of course, because they're inhibited. What's the word I want? Inhibited, incapacitated by the alcohol. Not incapacitated, but what's the word I want? The alcohol is inhibiting their abilities, and then they cause an accident, and maybe in the other car there's a whole family, and everybody in the other car is killed.
You can't reverse that.
You can't reverse it. You just killed an entire family because you were drunk.
Exactly.
There are consequences. And so what we want to encourage people to do is think about those consequences before you do things. And let's create a culture where we're actually thinking about not just what I want. You can't just have what you want. There are consequences. Think about what the consequences, potential consequences of your decision will be.
And contemporary culture is trying to wipe away personal responsibility. And that's pernicious to our society, because we personal responsibility was keeping people in check. You take responsibility for what you got yourself into. There's a saying that you made your bed, so you have to lay in it.
Yeah.
You can't make your bed and just undo it, or you let someone else lay in it, or you sleep in someone else's bed. You have to lay in your own bed. So that's what personal responsibility is. Just because you are drunk and you rape your grandma doesn't mean in the morning you will unrape her. You still rape your grandma. It will never go away.
Yeah.
So that's personal responsibility. So we should be advocating for personal responsibility in all facets of life. I made very many mistakes in my life, and I'm paying for those mistakes. Yeah, I'm not going to undo them, and I'm comfortable paying for my mistakes. That's what life is.
Yeah, and
there's no undo button.
Yeah, and you learn from your mistakes.
Exactly. You have to learn from them.
So the idea is, when you make a mistake, you can't undo it, but you can learn from your mistake and not make the same mistake again.
Definitely.
If you're making the same mistake over and over and over again. So we have some comments about war. We got several comments about the videos we did on war. And one of them is, War happens because people don't learn how to settle disputes and extremes like the 1994 Rwanda Holocaust, where a small group, both military and civilian, do bloody deeds. When disputes don't end after a war ends, later or sooner, another war will happen between the same groups. During the First World War, Armenian genocide was committed by Ottoman Turkey. So there are a couple things we could talk about in here. Paul, I wanted to maybe get your thoughts on the Rwanda genocide. You had this privileged class of people that over time maybe fell out of that privilege and then suddenly became a minority group, but then there was bitterness that eventually, hatred towards this group that eventually led to a genocide. Mainly we talked about last time about the American war narrative, but there's all kinds of other directions we can go with war. Do we want to talk about some of the conflicts and genocides and so forth that have taken place in Africa, like the Rwanda genocide? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so basically my idea on conflict is that the more minority group is over elevated and has a lot of favors, more like what the woke culture is preaching, because it's mostly campaigning for minorities. The more these minorities are getting privileges and etc., inevitably the majority will fight back. And that's how war starts, Okay, at least many wars have started like that, or civil wars, because,
Yes, which is what happened in Rwanda.
Yeah, it happened in Rwanda, it happens, it has happened in Uganda, it's soon to happen in different places. It has happened in Libya, it has happened all over the place. The moment you have a minority group over incentivized, having more resources, and the majority group will stand in arms eventually. There's something I told Bobby recently. You have I may digress a bit from war, but we call it the Twitter war, or like the online war right now. With, where there's a lot about feminism, men versus women. So there's something coming up. It's called the Drizzle campaign. So you find that men are now making skits about ladies who are stingy with their money. Can you imagine? She's not giving me my money. I'm home. I'm taking care of the kids. I'm washing, and it's now the man doing the female roles. And now she's complaining, why isn't the man buying for me a Maybach? Why isn't he buying for me a jet? Why isn't he building me a house? Okay, basically it's more of satire trying to attack females by the small things that females complain about men. Given the qualities that men as well apparently have a right to complain about the same thing. So it's just hilarious. But that's the battle, because the majority is the majority or the neglected gender is now fighting back using satire, and some women are actually not getting it. They get offended by it instead of getting now.
Satire is usually, that's why satire is so good. It's just the people that are the targets of satire often miss it. It goes over their head.
Exactly.
And that's one of the reasons why it's funny.
Yeah. So, but anyway, that's how war comes about. When one group is taken above the other group, what do you expect? Eventually, things are going to go bad. Yeah. That's why we're talking about things like morals, things like having a direction, things like having common sense reigning. We may have a lot of principles that the world is teaching us which are not common sense.
Yeah.
But eventually common sense either prevails or it fights back. And sometimes common sense might fight back, and that would mean war or civil war.
Yeah.